The myth everyone knows. November 1902, Mississippi bottomlands, damp, cold, stubborn. Governor Andrew Longino wants a headline hunt and invites a president who loves hard trails. Theodore Roosevelt arrives with a reputation, rough rider, trust buster, the man who hikes faster than his aides can gossip. He's expected to shoot something big. The woods don't care. Guides push deeper, dogs bay, daylight thins, then comes the fix. They run an old black bear to exhaustion, rope it near a water hole and lash it there. The animal is injured, out of options. They send for Roosevelt. He steps into the opening and sees a trussed prop. Sportsmanship is his code, and stagecraft is never far from politics. He refuses, not like this. He orders them to put the bear down humanely or cut it loose, but he won't fire. No roar, no triumphant portrait, just a line drawn at the edge of a swamp. 2 days later, a Washington cartoonist sharpens the moment into something a country can pass from hand to hand. Clifford Berriman's Drawing the Line in Mississippi runs in the Washington Post. Roosevelt, hat brim straight, palm outward, turns away from a bear that looks more cub than killer. The caption does the work, the drawing does more. It softens a square-jawed politician and hands him restraint you can see. In early versions, the satire nudges his hunting fortunes. In later redraws, the bear shrinks and brightens, tilting public perception toward tenderness. Editors don't realize it yet, but readers cling to character as much as policy. That image syndicates, then echoes. With each reprint, the bear grows smaller and more approachable. Between the muddy fact and the inked line, a predator becomes a symbol. While papers spin, urban windows improvise. In Brooklyn and Lower Manhattan, proprietors who sell notions and nickel toys slide homemade plush bears beside candy jars and tape a card to the glass. Teddy's bear! The nickname Teddy already trails Roosevelt in headlines. Now it's a sign that stops pedestrian. Customers lean in because the object carries a clean story, mercy in a violent pastime. A few ask if the president approved. Clerks shrug. The price tag answers. The bears move. Berriman's image keeps lapping the country. A senator's aide clips it. A milliner sketches it for a display. A vaudeville routine adds a nervous cub and gets a laugh. Across town, a Brownsville candy seller wonders how many his wife can sew before Saturday. Notice the stakes forming. Roosevelt is a reformer in a nation that loves its tycoons and its myths. This small mercy rounds off his edges. To merchants, that roundness looks like a handle. If you can touch the story, you can sell it. A jointed figure with a name is easier to move than a platform nobody's read. Meanwhile, the White House mailbag fills. Entrepreneurs request permission to use his nickname. They don't get endorsements, but they don't get injunctions either. Courteous refusals leave space. In that gray zone, commerce takes root. Here's the irony. A refusal to shoot becomes ignition for mass production. Newspapers swell demand. Novelty sellers rename stock. Department stores stage a tableau, pine boughs, a cardboard swamp, a placard with a cartoon, a neat rank of bears. The hunt becomes an exhibition you can pass during lunch. The bear itself is still more idea than standardized object. Faces vary, long snouts here, button eyes there, stitched noses that curl a little. Perfection isn't the point yet. Association is. Put the nickname near the silhouette and watch strangers feel something soft. The market smells a new category. Shops take deposits. Seamstresses copy a window across the street. Children press faces to glass. Adults buy for parlors as conversation pieces. A name turns cloth into a keepsake. A headline turns a keepsake into heat. While cartoons sell papers and windows sell bears, something else takes shape far from Brooklyn, an articulated creature built from design, not rumor. In a Swabian town called Gingen, a firm is refining a bear that can stand, sit, and hold a pose. The American nickname is waiting. The German mechanism is coming. When they meet, the story won't just be told. It'll be held. Marguerite Steiff's iron will. While Brooklyn taped cards to windows, Gingen lived by the hum of treadles and the scrape of pins on tin. Marguerite Steiff sat low in a wheeled chair, right arm partly stiff from childhood polio, mind moving faster than any spool. She'd chosen sewing because a machine could be adapted. Cousins rigged a treadle so she could drive it without standing. Independence wasn't rhetoric to her. It was shop hours, invoices, wages, everyday proof. She began with felt jackets and pincushions, goods you could fold into a trunk and sell in Stuttgart. Then a small felt elephantal, slipped out of its category. Mothers bought it for pins, children smuggled it to bed. That theft turned into demand. By the early 189s, her name sat on a registration, orders traveled by rail, and her parlor worked like a disciplined organism, 4 sewers inside, a web of home workers beyond. She wasn't making trifle. She was building a system that paid on time. Nephews drifted into the orbit. Richard, sketchbook always open, spent afternoons at the zoo watching bears pace, rise, and drop like hinged furniture. His drawings chased anatomy, shoulder girdles, wrist turns, the way a spine curved when a big animal sat to scratch. He didn't want softness alone. He wanted articulation, a body that could change its mind in your hand. He brought Marguerite a proposal as crisp as a blueprint. Mohair plush on top, wood wool excelsior inside for firmness, and a metal disc and pin joint at shoulders and hips with a smaller set at the neck. He coded it 55 PB, 55 centimeters, plush, Beweglic movable. Not a nursery sop, not yet. A mechanism wearing fur, built to pose on a sideboard where adults would turn a head and feel the click. Inside the workrooms, precision became doctrine. Steel discs stacked in bowls. Pins were counted, not guessed. Mohair bolts from the Schult mill were brushed directionally so nap flowed like fur. Workers stitched with measured tension. Any seam that puckered was picked and redone. At stuffing tables, excelsior filled limbs tightly and torsos firm but not rigid. A squeeze should rebound without crunching. Forewomen checked joint torque by habit, arm up, arm out, head left, head right, listening for a smooth resistance that read as quality. This was not a guaranteed victory. German plush makers crowded the field. Tariffs shifted like weather. Larger firms in Nuremberg had deeper pockets and louder agents. A jointed bear demanded more metal, more time, higher costs. Marguerite's calculus was cold and clear. Only an object that earned attention on a counter in 3 seconds could justify the spend. So Richard kept shaving the muzzle, adjusting ear angle, extending the forearms a shade to echo a real bearer's reap. Cute wasn't the brief. Presence was. Meanwhile, the company professionalized around the bench. Orders consolidated through Leipzig agents. Sample cases were standardized, every piece tagged with model and material. Home workers received bundles with thread cards and stitch counts written in a tidy hand. Paydays were public and punctual. Reputation traveled in those envelopes as surely as finished goods traveled in crates. Marguerite, courteous but unsparing, returned any lot that drifted from spec. The message was simple. Quality is policy. Here's the quiet hinge. While America was naming an idea, Steiff was perfecting a grammar you could touch. A jointed figure didn't just look alive, it asked for interaction. Your thumb under the chin, your finger on a paw, the small thrill when a head held a pose, it was tactile theater. Adults paused because their hands learned a script in seconds. Engineering disguised itself as empathy. Fair season loomed like judgment. Leipzig's toy fair was where curiosity met capital. Richard packed 55 PBs with limbs cushioned so pins wouldn't warp, noses protected from flattening. Anxiety lived in arithmetic. If buyers walked past, inventory would stale. If one placed a large order, every loom and kitchen table in Gingen would light up late. Marguerite signed manifests carefully, numbers double-checked against cash on hand because a bad shipment could bury a year. One detail stayed constant. Nothing here was built for toddlers. Metal joints, firm stuffing, long lines, these were adult proportions. In Germany, the bear sat with other interior curios, a cousin to nutcrackers and carved smokers. But across the ocean, a political cartoon was shrinking a bear into something tender. 2 tracks, 2 destinies, same silhouette. Back in Gingen, iteration never stopped. Richard tested glass eyes for catch light, then returned to shoe buttons for safety and cost control. Ear placement moved by millimeters to shift mood. A small hump at the shoulder suggested muscle and made the profile credible when seated. Every change went through the same gate. Does the piece invite a hand? When the crates finally slid out toward Leipzig, the factory's air felt thin by effort and full of momentum. Workers wiped tables, flexed sore wrists, and waited for a telegram. Marguerite, practical to the end, checked cash for wages and ordered more mohair. They had built something that could stand, sit, and listen. Somewhere across an ocean, a nickname waited. If a buyer connected the two, a seamstress in Gingen would add hours, and a clerk in New York would tap a sign that said Teddy. The American retail spark. While sample cases rolled toward Leipzig, the nickname sprinted through American streets. Teddy was already ink shortcut for Roosevelt. Now it climbed into windows. Along Pitkin Avenue and up Broadway, novelty counters repurposed what they had: plush oddments, last year's bears with tidier seams, and slid a playing card beside them. Teddy's bear. The card did more work than the cloth. Customers paused because the object carried a story you could repeat in a sentence. Mercy in a brutal pastime. A president who refused the easy shot. The bear became a small, portable version of that restraint. You weren't buying stuffing, you were buying a mood. A woman asked if the White House approved. The clerk didn't have a letter. He had a price and a line starting behind her. Department stores turned it into theater. Window dressers knew seasonal grammar, autumn leaves, tinsel for winter, but this was different. They staged a miniature swamp, painted cypress, a camp stool left empty, a toy rifle leaned aside, and ranks of bears, heads subtly tilted toward the street. Recognition did the pulling. Shoppers smiled before they understood why. The tableau offered a decision you could agree with and take home. Behind those panes, buyers tracked numbers they hadn't seen for plush. Unjointed bears, average quality, moving fast because a sign tied them to a headline. They sent notes to jobbers. More bears, any capable source, speed over pedigree. Jobbers wrote to importers and to anyone in Newark, Hoboken, or Brooklyn sewing at volume. The order sheets used the same word without hesitation, Teddy. No one waited for a license. The White House's polite distance made the name feel public, and that gray zone became a runway. Here's a morning worth holding. A Brownsville candy seller unlocks his door to find two children pressed to the glass, cheeks fogging the window. Yesterday's bear is gone. Today's bear sits between licorice sticks with a ribbon from a spool that usually ties gift boxes. The sign reads the same. The kids point, and a parent steps in with coins already warm in a palm. The register bell sounds like permission. Meanwhile, small workshops trailed the windows with needles. A home sewer copied a silhouette by memory, stuffed limbs with Excelsior from a packing crate, and clipped buttons off a worn shirt for eyes. By Saturday, she delivered 6. On Monday, the store wanted 12. The city became a copying press where participation felt communal rather than pirated. Because no one owned the word, everyone used it. In offices above the sales floor, a new math stabilized the frenzy. Bears turned foot traffic into receipts. Receipts justified a bigger display budget. Displays pulled newspapers into the loop. Weekend editions ran half-page illustrations of window scenes, and the free press acted like paid media. A buyer circled a date, Thanksgiving. If they could stack 100 bears by then, the season would tilt their way. Taste sharpened as volume rose. Customers began to ask for bears that sat well and looked back. That meant joints, not flat seams. A letter left a New York desk headed for Stuttgart and Gingen. Can you send articulated samples? While that question crossed the Atlantic, domestic makers tried cardboard discs and wire pivots to mimic motion at a lower cost. Some worked, some squeaked. Clerks learned to demonstrate the good ones, lift an arm, cock a head, sell the pose. Legality never caught up because it didn't need to. Trademark law around personalities was thin. The president wasn't selling his name. The press had already handed the nickname to the public. The term teddy bear spread like wallpaper. Catalogs wrote it into captions. Order pads shortened it to teddies. Church bazaars printed it on flyers. Nobody sued a bake sale. Parallel to the storefronts, vaudeville picked up the rhythm. A comic refused to shoot a string-pulled cub. The punchline landed. The audience left humming. On Monday, they walked past a window and met the same small figure under pine boughs. Jokes became sales copy without an agency in sight. The country was doing the marketing as a favor to itself. Here, where the loop tightened. Story drew the eye, touch closed the sale. A bear with a firmer torso and a head that held an angle answered the hand's curiosity. Jointed imports would soon match that feeling with precision, but even before they arrived, the expectation existed. The nickname had created a category. The category began to demand a mechanism. By spring, buyers called it a craze in letters to suppliers and didn't bother to define the term. Shops reordered faster than jobbers could consolidate shipments. A clerk with neat handwriting wrote teddy bears 10 times before lunch. Across town, a seamstress counted coins and bought better fabric. On a pier, a crate marked toys, plush, jointed, slid into a hold bound east. When those bears came back west, they'd meet a name already waiting on the glass. And that's the sparks lasting trick. Retail didn't invent the bear. It invented the lane the bear could run in, signage, staging, and a feeling you could buy without asking anyone's permission. The name was ambient, the demand was real, the shelf was ready. All it needed was a body that moved like the story felt. The mysterious buyer at Leipzig. Leipzig's toy fair opens like a clockwork city. Steam puffs from tin locomotives, wooden clowns nod in unison, and aisles fill with buyers who know exactly how fast to walk when they're deciding whether to spend a season's budget in 3 hours. At the Steiff stand, 55 PB holds itself like a polite stranger, upright, palms slightly forward, chin at a neutral tilt. European buyers slow, curious, then move on, uncertain who this articulated creature is for. Late morning, a man with American vowels stops and doesn't touch anything for the first 30 seconds. He circles the bear the way machinists circle a lathe, eyes scanning for repeatability. Then he lifts an arm, feels the joint's resistance, turns the head a quarter, checks the sit by easing the bear's hips onto a shelf ledge. He's assessing whether this object will perform the same way 1,000 times in 1,000 windows. His card reads New York export. Names blur in archival memory, but the role is clear. A jobber who brokers between European craftsmanship and American appetite. He asks questions that move like a checklist. How many units can you guarantee in 8 weeks? What's the variance in joint tension between lots? Are you sourcing mohair exclusively from Schult? How well does the ear seam hold under handling? He's not testing charm, he's testing a supply chain. He doesn't say Teddy. In Leipzig, the Roosevelt halo hasn't settled over every plush, but he knows what's happening in Brooklyn, window cards doing more work than fabric, customers asking for bears that sit and look back. A jointed version with stature could triple a price. What he needs is certainty. Consistent joints, consistent stuffing, consistent silhouettes. He wants the pose to sell itself. There's a pause you can hear when someone moves from interest to scale. He asks for 1,000, then 2, then a staged delivery in lots that won't choke the workrooms or the docks. The number redraws the calendar. Steiff staff glance at one another. Loom bookings, disc orders, Excelsior bales, homeworker quotas, all the math that turns an order into overtime and a hiring notice or into a mistake you can't absorb. They open the ledger. 55 PB, heights with intolerance, mohair shades agreed, packing instructions to prevent joint warp, limbs wrapped, noses braced, crates lined so straw doesn't scratch. He wants model marks discreet for internal stock keeping, not customer facing. The button in ear hasn't arrived yet. That defensive hardware will come in 1904-1905 when imitation becomes a tax. For now, identity lives in paperwork and trust. Production pivots. Discs and pins must land on time. Mohair bolts must be cut with waste measured like coins. Stuffing tables need space to stage limbs, torsos, heads, and repeatable stations. Forum informalized checks, arm up and out, head left and right, seated balance confirmed, seam tension felt with a thumb's press at the shoulder. A bear that fails rework goes back into a hands pile. No compromises, because returns from America would cost more than pride. The buyer leaves a deposit big enough to buy mohair in bulk and pay wages before invoices clear. He doesn't pose for a photograph. He's already thinking about window scenes on Fifth Avenue, cards that will do the talking while jointed figures hold a conversation with the street. He needs product that survives the ocean, the crate, the clerk's hands, and the child's first turn of the head. Meanwhile, the fair keeps pulsing, tin toys whirring, doll heads blinking, organizers ringing closing bells on orders that will decide which factories sleep light and which sleep well. Steiff packs sample gaps with notes, adjust ear tilt 1 degree, preserve muzzle taper, hold joint torque inside agreed range. The system learns under pressure. Crates roll by rail to port. Bills of lading list toys plush jointed, numbers that look sober until you imagine them multiplied across windows. Seawater is the old enemy, delays the new. Marguerite checks cash for payroll, then orders more pins. A telegram arrives, demand brisk, displays successful, ship earliest lot by month's end. The nickname still isn't on the correspondence. It will be on the glass. Here's the legend that grows later, an order card misplaced, a shipment that never reaches a New York ledger, 3,000 bears rumored lost at sea.